Today we are joined by Paul Thomas. A little blast from the past, a little bit of what's working right now, all encapsulated in your story.
So I've spent 25 years doing a lot of different things, built a lot of different content sites. When I start a project, it's a 5-year commitment. I know it's going to take that long to really build something and grow something.
You are already starting to be able to see ahead because of your last 15 years of being in this space.
I could look back and see that the competition was coming in, that social media was taking away the eyeballs, and that mobile was taking away the eyeballs.
What you pivoted into.
I pivoted away from pure content sites more into subscription and membership sites. And that's really where the cusp of my focus is now and where I'm seeing a lot of success.
Help people walk through how to pick a niche.
The key difference in your content is it has to be refreshable content or renewable content.
How are you structuring the model?
Trying to get people into the free stuff, but then wanting to pay to get the extra stuff.
Tell us how the first and second site are doing right now.
The first site is doing very well, 4.7 million visitors a year, and it's doing 130,000 in ARR.
Let's talk about how you get traffic. Let's talk about how you engage with people.
You don't need SEO to actually be successful. What I did is I took an approach of social first.
Let's talk about your email newsletter, your email process. Take us through from like a high level, once somebody gets on your email list, what an experience or what the interactions are going to look like.
This is one thing where I do it very differently from a lot of people in the industry. A lot of people say,
all right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Today we are joined by Paul Thomas. Paul, welcome on board.
Thanks, Jared. It's great to be here. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I feel like we're going to take a walk down memory lane today. And at the same time, while we get to hear memory lane and while we get to go there, we're going to hear about a story that you'll be sharing about your journey in the online space and about what you're working on now that's also, really being successful. So we'll kind of get a little blast from the past, a little bit of what's working right now, all encapsulated in your story. You and I first connected throughout the years on Twitter, so we'll kind of talk about that and how we've connected there. But before we get into the details for today, how about you give us some background? Tell us who you are before you started in the online world.
Yeah, so before I actually started on the online world, I was actually in college, and that was back in the 90s. I actually got out of college right into the online world. I was one of the lucky few that didn't have to go through a lot of corporate America, software engineering type stuff. So I've always been in a technical field. I was lucky enough to hire straight into the internet world, building websites for a lot of great companies. And that was back in the 90s when the internet was just taking off and merging. And I've spent the last 30 years doing a lot of different things. So I've got a lot of experience, a lot of things to share. But I actually started off doing my own things around the year 2000. I was starting to look at different technologies, and I started to decide, well, if I'm going to learn something new, might as well do something that I enjoy and might make some more money. So I really got into the entrepreneurial side about 25 years ago, built my first content-based website, and this was way back when, before a lot of the stuff that we have right now. And a lot of people say it was a lot harder back then. There was all that kind of stuff, but it was actually a lot easier back then. There was not a lot of competition. Certainly there wasn't the marketing avenues there are today, but if I knew what I knew now, going back 25 years, things would be probably a little bit different, but you learn from your experiences. So I've spent 25 years doing a lot of different things, built a lot of different content sites. I've exited a few, very successfully. So certainly had my fair share of failures along the way as well. The things have gone by the wayside. And yeah, I've tried my hand at everything. I've done content websites. I've done social media apps. I've done selling template websites on eBay. Even tried my hand at doing some just regular eBay shopping. But it's really culminated into the last 6-7 years where I've taken a hard look at what has been successful for me and what has been a failure for me, and really resetting my strategy. So for the next 25 years, I've got a lot going for me, and I've got a much better structured approach to things.
So you're probably one of the few people listening to this podcast who it sounds like has never Googled from a cubicle how to make money online, how to get out of my 9 to 5, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's funny because way back when I started, Google really wasn't even a thing. So it was actually Yahooing that kind of stuff back in those days.
Yahoo.
I remember way back when I started, I used to be able to buy the top ad placement on Yahoo for 1 cent a click. Those are the days back then. But it's been a long journey since then.
Hey, Jared here. Just a quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right back to the episode. If you want to see one of Niche Site Lady's websites, she has a little case study going on. The site is called veganwins.co.uk, and she's sharing everything she's doing with it publicly. The site was built for her by web asset builders, and you can get one done for yourself as well. These social-first niche websites are designed to capture the attention of people on Facebook, complete with engaging content, visuals, and even newsletter lead magnets. Check out webassetbuilders.com if you'd like to learn more. They even have installment payment options available. You can use coupon code NICHEPURSUITS on checkout to get 20% off all offers. Again, that's webassetbuilders.com. Coupon code NICHEPURSUITS, all one word, for 20% off. All right, now back to the episode. I know you had a big pivot that we're going to talk about, kind of, this pivot and this realization. You almost had a crystal ball, to be honest with you, in terms of looking over the agenda, what we're talking about. I mean, listeners can know that there's this big pivot that you made, and we'll get into that, but maybe pre-pivot. So the early days, the first decade plus, just maybe give us a couple successes that you had or a couple memories of some projects that went well, to give people an idea. And I think it'll be fun, like I said, because a lot of us are very used to talking about content and internet entrepreneurship for the last 5 to 10 years, but certainly getting a little window into what it looked like in the 2000s and even early 2010s.
Yeah, so back in the day, as I said, it was fairly easy. There was not a lot of competition. My very first website, as I said, I was able to buy some pretty key keywords for very cheap. That site grew extremely quickly, and it's one of the ones where I really wish I hadn't sold it. I exited that in the first 2 years for, in these days it wasn't a huge amount of money, but back then, it was low 5 figures, which was a huge amount of money for a website back then. So that was really my first website. Being able to exit for low 5 figures was really critical and really set the mindset for, okay, this stuff is going to be big and this stuff's going to be huge and make money. So keep going with it. So that was good. I then pivoted into some smaller content sites, some really easy but large niches, and those grew pretty well. I exited a couple. One I kept on to, and it finally bit the dust a few years ago because I never really kept up with it. But a lot of it was focused on what I see a lot of people doing these days, which is you go ahead and you build a content site and you hope that the search engines will pick it up, and that's really your primary source of traffic. And then you just put display ads or affiliate ads on it, and that's the way you just go ahead and grow forward with it. And then, which is great. It worked really well back then. It still works to some degree today as well. Certainly post HCU, it's not working as well as it did. And as you said with the crystal ball, I certainly didn't anticipate that. But hindsight's 2020. My pivot did help me move away from the risks in that kind of area. But yeah, having those content-based websites, which were monetized by display ads, it was good money. It was certainly good traffic. But then as I came to the mid 2015, 2016, 2017, I could see those sites starting to suffer a little bit in terms of how they were doing competition-wise. Social media was burgeoning, and that was taking a lot of eyeballs away. Mobile app development was burgeoning, and that was taking a lot of eyeballs away. There was just this slow degradation of the traffic and the money that was coming from those sites. So it was really a time to take a look and see, what does the next 10, 20, 25 years look like in terms of this space? Because the past 15 years of content sites was, when you look into the future, going to slowly start to degrade. Now, I certainly couldn't foresee HCU happening. I couldn't foresee the AI world happening, which was going to move a lot of the stuff. So I got very lucky in that standpoint. But back in 2018, I really sat down, took a look at what I was doing and said, okay, I'm going to have to mothball what I've done in the past, rewrite the script for what I want to do in the future. And that was really taking a more of a structured approach. In the past, I'd been a lot like other entrepreneurs where you'd build something and then you'd let it work for a while, and then a shiny object would come along and I'd want to go and do that. And I really needed to refocus myself on dedicating my time to single projects so that could be successful, but also be picking the right projects that I knew had the better chance of being successful in the future. So really, I had 2 key core principles that I was actually going to go on. One of them was sticking to 5-year plans. And a lot of people like to think, 1 year, 2 year, maybe 3 year if you're lucky, but I was really committing to 5 years. So when I start a project, it's a 5-year commitment. I know it's going to take that long to really build something and grow something. And I know if I commit the time to it, and I commit the effort to it, and I don't get distracted by shiny objects or starting new projects, there's a very high chance it's going to be successful. And certainly my first 2 projects that have been in this 5-year plan have proven that to date. So so far, so good. We'll see what project number 3 brings along in the next few years. So the 5 years was the key there. And that's not to say 5 years is then you give up after 5 years. 5 years is just the window in which, okay, now you can take a step back, look and decide what you want to do. Do I want to exit this project? Do I want to keep it along and going? But it allows me to take a breather and then start on a new project. So right now I've got 2 overlapping projects. When I start the 3rd one in about 3 years' time, I might end up exiting one of them so I can dedicate more of my time on it. But that time frame really does allow you to really focus, because it takes that long to be successful and grow those 6-figure, 7-figure businesses. And the second one was sorry, go ahead. You got to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to make the parallel. I mean, it's so interesting to hear you so methodically plan out your pivot. And if we look back at that time period, a lot of people would say that 2016, 17, 18, that was the time that content sites were doing amazing. But you had 15 years underneath your belt of content websites. So it's just interesting to hear you talk about it. I think the thing to highlight is like the experience. It gives you a different framework to make decisions by, where so many people, myself included, would say 2017 those are the glory days of content websites. You are already starting to be able to see ahead because of your last 15 years of being in the space. So it's interesting to hear you. And you're right, like HCU wasn't on the horizon yet, and that changed a lot of stuff. But even without HCU, you were starting to see the changes. So go on with your second project. Sorry, I guess I was dying to share that.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely right. It's all about perspective, because you're right. Even if you come into the industry today, you can look at the content industry, and it's still a very low barrier to get into. You see a lot of people getting in today, and not so much focusing on Google, but focusing on Facebook and Pinterest and other avenues, Medium and what have you. And it's still a very good way in which you can go ahead and build a site simply, right, get some revenue from it, get some traffic for it. There's a low barrier to entry for that. But with my 15 years worth of experience, I was able to say, I could continue doing this, but I could get surface level revenue. If I want to take it to the next level, then I really need to pivot and look at, how do I protect myself? And as you said, I could look back and see that the competition was coming in where it wasn't there before. I could look back and see that social media was taking away the eyeballs, and that mobile was taking away the eyeballs, and how could I pivot to leverage those rather than compete against those?
So let's talk about what you pivoted into, and use the rest of this kind of interview time to learn from you. I'm going to ask at the end for any crystal ball references you might have for the future, by the way. So I'm just going to fair warning here that we can say in 10 years you heard it here first. But I'll save that for later. Let's talk about what you've kind of pivoted into from a high level. What was the shift from content websites to, and then let's get into some of the steps you took to build those.
Sure. So the key element was really around audience. Audience is always going to be number one whenever you're building a website or a product or an application or whatever it is. You've really got to get eyeballs on that. And it's not just about getting eyeballs one time, it's about getting eyeballs multiple times and having them, you become a trusted brand for them and wanting them to come back and everything like that. We heard a lot of people talk about brand when HCU came out, and how those that were good brands seemed to fare better. Those that didn't really have brands were not so lucky in that aspect. Now, whether or not that's true or not, the jury's still out, but we certainly see a lot more reporting about it these days and what have you. So for me, it was more about how could I take what I have right now, which is what I was viewing, and it's a bit of a harsh term, but more of a churn and burn way of getting people into the website. You were getting people in through Google, they were coming to your website once, and then they were going away. And if you probably asked them the next day, hey, what was that website you looked at yesterday? They couldn't remember the name of it. That's really never a good idea if you're trying to build a long, sustainable business. You want people to remember. You want people to remember your brand. You want people to have a reason to come back to you. So it was more a case of looking at the kind of site I was building, and building a site that could have a sustainable brand where people would recognize the name, want to talk about the name, want to tell their friends about it, but also want them to come back and visit the site over and over again on a repetitive basis. that's when you really start to build up the momentum and build up the growth of a site, because you're not just relying on this churn and burn of Google site traffic coming in or social traffic coming in, going away, and then the only reason that they're going to come back is if they might Google something again or see your Pinterest pin again or whatever it is. You want them to come back directly to you for some reason or other. So it was picking the niches and building the sites around that kind of mentality, the mentality of user retention, getting them to come back. And that's why niche selection was so important, and the site structure. So I really took a long, hard look at what are the kinds of niches I wanted to go into. So it was less of the kind of stuff that I'd been in the past, which was more content focused, one time, get an answer, go away kind of thing. And then also building the site so that it had content and functionality and features that would really bring someone back. And that started to steer more towards, initially I was thinking digital products, but that very quickly morphed into a mindset of, okay, memberships and subscriptions. That's really where people are coming back for. If you can hook someone into signing up for a website and wanting to, get to new features, then that's that they want to do that because they want to come back and use it again. So I pivoted away from pure content sites more into subscription and membership sites. And that's really where the cusp of my focus is now and where I'm seeing a lot of success.
Help people walk through how to pick a niche that lends itself well, instead of the content, to say a subscription or a membership, because a lot of people listening will have the mindset of content and have the mindset of creating content that answers a user's query, but doesn't necessarily get that retention or get people talking about the brand like you talked about.
Yeah. So there's some key critical differences. Where it certainly can be a content-based website. There's no reason why you couldn't have a content-based website. But the key difference in your content is it has to be refreshable content or renewable content. A lot of people in the past would go over after long-term keywords and try and solve a question, and that really leads to that churn and burn. If you're getting content that is refreshable, and say, for example, every month there's new information they might want to come back for, or if it's, say, on a hobby or interest that they're really interested in that always has new things coming out about it, then they would come back to you for that content and for that. So it was making sure that every time they come back, there's something new that they want to go for. If you look at sites like All Trails or Fishbrain, or even there's one out there called funtrivia.com, these are the kind of sites where they always have fresh content, and they always have content that people want to come back for, because they're not answering one question. They're answering their needs for a hobby or an interest they have. They might be wanting to take trivia every single day, or they might be wanting to look at where are the fish biting in the lake I am. Or they might want to look at the latest trails around me that I can go and walk on this weekend, that kind of stuff. It's refreshable content. So that is pretty critical. And then moving away from just pure content can be tough because there's a lot of caveats around being able to get that content, maintain that content, always make it refreshable. But then the other side you see is a lot of people are now moving towards SaaS-based businesses these days. And SaaS has a very strong connotation around the business world in terms of, okay, I'm building it for business to business. But that doesn't have to be the case. You can actually build software as a service for consumers, for regular businesses, you and I. So all you're doing is you're taking content or you're taking features and turning it into something that people want to use every single day. A lot of people are making calculators, these kind of things. I see you're doing some as well. That's the kind of first step into that kind of marketplace where you're building a repetitive tool that wants to come back and use every single day. And then you can start structuring, okay, how can I make this into a paid product, an offering that is large enough package that people are going to want to pay for access to it and come back to it.
You mentioned All Trails. I'm a yearly subscriber for All Trails. Love that.
There you go. Yep.
Great job. So that rings true for me. That makes sense. Thanks for walking us down that. I mean, in terms of the model to keep people around, when we hear membership, we have some certain connotations that come to mind. How are you structuring the model? There's a lot of different models there. For All Trails, for example, I can go download that. It's an app. It's also a website. I can download that. We'll call it a freemium model where I can use it without having to pay. There's a certain number of features. And then there's obviously a paid version, paid monthly, paid yearly, et cetera, et cetera. How have you found the structure in terms of, I guess, the pricing, in terms of the monetization, in terms of how people get best engaged with and keep coming back in a model that they feel comfortable paying for?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the freemium model. You mentioned freemium. That's really the way I go. Uh, there's a lot of people out there that will try and gatekeep all of the content that they have and all the functionality in it. It'll be, you go to the website, it's a landing page. The only way you can get in is to go ahead and pay. That's one way you can do it, but then you have to have a very heavy paid marketing up front, because you've got to get that brand, you've got to get the message of what the content is, and you've got to get people to want to actually pay the money before they've even tried it. That can be tough. To take the easy approach, I take the freemium approach, where I provide a lot of content for free, and this helps in multiple different ways. If you provide a lot of content for free, I get them into the website with that free content. A lot of that is using various things like social media. Certainly Google is still a big play in that area. And of course newsletters, which is my bread and butter. I love the newsletters. But if you get them hooked in with the free content, they're going to start returning to you for the free content. Once they start returning to you for free content, there's always a premium amount of stuff that you can provide. And that's normally the functionality or the premium refreshable content. Those little extra bits, like All Trails, you said, you're subscribed to All Trails because there's a premium feature. I'm not a subscriber, but I'm sure they've got something in there where they gatekeep. They give a lot away for free, but they gatekeep some of the best stuff that you have to pay for. And you get a lot of functionality out of it, and you don't mind paying for it because you like that extra functionality. So that's the balance you're going for. You're going for trying to get people in for the free stuff, but then wanting to pay to get the extra stuff, and not feeling like they just disgruntled for having to pay because they don't want to. It's they're getting the benefit and they see value in what you're giving to them.
There's a couple different models inside of this model of giving some away for free and then some paid. And I'm just curious if you've tested different models, because I hear this question a lot when people talk about monetization. There's, like you talked about with All Trails, for example, they have this feature where I can download all the maps I want with the paid version. And that's really, you talk about the feature that I love. Well, that's worth me paying, whatever it is, $30 a year, because half the time I'm out hiking, I don't have cell service. And so if I tried to use the app, I wouldn't be able to use it. And so if I can download some stuff and basically interact with it offline, I get this value. And that's really where I can use a certain base level of the app without paying, and then I can use the premium version of the app with paying. I know other people will have a period where they try to get people involved by giving them access to the all paid version for a period of time. And then that's like the first 2 weeks, almost like a trial feature. Have you tested which ones seem to work better, or is it very niche dependent?
Yeah, both work really well. I have always steered away from the free trial and more into giving more away. Now, that's a very careful balance you've got to do, though. If you're giving stuff away for free and then hoping they'll convert to premium, you've got to make sure that your product offering is large enough that what you're giving away as premium is aspirational enough for people to want to sign up for it. I mean, like you said, the downloading of apps, that's a key feature that you can use the free stuff without it, but downloading the maps is critical for you to really enjoy, and you don't mind paying for it. If you get the balance wrong, you can give too much away for free, and then people won't sign up for the premium side. Or the flip side is you don't give enough away for free, and they don't understand the value of what's in the premium side, and you'll lose the conversion there. So it's a delicate balance, and I wish there was an exact science for every single one, but it is very niche dependent on what you can and what you can't give away. I always like to try and strike a balance of, when I'm building something, I'll go a one-to-one relationship. So I'll give something away for free, and then I'll give an updated or upgraded version of it in the premium side. So they'll get a taster free, and they'll get the upgraded in the paid version. I haven't gone down the free trial aspect, only because I don't like the whole aspect of getting someone to sign up for free, and then they use it, and then they go ahead and they're almost sometimes tricked into accidentally renewing sometimes, or they'll just decide that, I'm not using it today. I only signed up because I wanted to look, and then I'll just cancel. They're not really ready at that point to use the premium features. I'd much rather want them to actually want it, and that way they're going to retain it longer because they're actively signing up for it. And that leads to a healthier revenue model in terms of being able to predict what is going to be your recurring monthly revenue, because those people are in there and want to stay there.
Anything you're comfortable sharing, like what have you found is in your projects a percentage of people who are on the freemium versus we'll call it the premium model? And are there any industry-wide benchmarks that you know about that you kind of went in with understanding?
Yeah, that was one of the parts where I didn't actually do very good research. I went in kind of blind. I knew the model worked, but I didn't really have a good, for my niches, understanding of what is that conversion rate. And between my two different sites, I actually see very different conversion rates.
Oh,
My
interesting.
my first site now, I don't know if that's just because one is more mature than the other side, or whether or not it's the niche selection, but I am seeing a difference in there. The first site I put up, I'm seeing about a 1 in 40 conversion, 1 in 35 conversion, which honestly, I don't know if it's good. For me, it's good because it means, I've got some good numbers to work with. I know if I bring in 35, 40 people onto the free side, one of them's going to convert. And then my retention period for that is how much they're going to actually convert into from a lifetime revenue perspective. The second site that I have now, I'm actually seeing a much lower conversion. It's actually more around 1 in 70, 1 in 80 right now. And I think that is because I built up a lot of free before launching the premium side. So I think my numbers are a little bit skewed there. I only launched the premium side about 3 months ago on that one, but I had 2 years of free. So I'm hoping those numbers will balance out and come a little bit more in line with what I'm seeing the first side. Certainly seems to be trending that way, which is good. The other key thing when you're thinking about free versus premium and going to membership sites is retention periods of your users. This goes back into niche selection as well.
LTV, yeah, it's on my list to ask you about.
So I'll jump into it now. So one of the key things that I've noticed between the difference in the sites is the niches I picked are very different niches. There's zero overlap between them. I would say certainly in interest, there's zero overlap. I would say customer base, very hard to find customers interested in site one and would also be interested in site two, which leads to a very interesting dynamic of how the lifetime value works out for those. Lifetime value for site number one, I'm getting about a 6-month retention on that on average. That's the medium. Certainly there's people that are a lot more on that. They've stayed for 5 years. People that turn after 1 month. Second site, early months, early days in that. But from what I projected, because I did a little bit more research into the second side, we're talking about lifetime retention of multiple years, even decade plus for this kind of stuff. And that's where it comes down to, I really focused on that to pick a niche that I knew was going to have a much longer retention on the premium side simply because of the nature of what I'm offering there.
So, I mean, that's good perspective. Like maybe the conversion is half of what site number one is. But I mean, if your LTV is at 10x, then yes, there's a front end expense to build it up. But your LTV, your lifetime value, for those who aren't familiar with that phrase, your lifetime value of a customer is so much longer that the efforts you put in will, pay off in the long run.
Exactly. Yeah, it really makes a difference. And then when you put in that with the pricing model as well, that's where you really start to see, the magic start to happen and that revenue start to compound, month after month, year after year. I love it when I see, go back and look at my subscriber numbers and I see someone who's been there for 5 years plus, and how much they've actually in Stripe, how much they've actually spent on it. It's nice to see those numbers.
I realize it's a good time. I want to transition into marketing and how you get people to this site. Obviously, that's going to be a huge topic for a lot of people listening. They want to hear how you drive traffic in this day and age. I realized I glossed over it though. Tell us how the first and second site are doing right now. Any numbers you're comfortable sharing, whether it's visitors, traffic, whether it's revenue, whether it's, lifetime value of a customer, just any numbers so we can get our heads around how you drive this kind of volume to these particular sites.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the first site is doing very well. It's 6 years old now, 5 years, it's been my maturation period for the site. So I consider it as matured, and it's doing about 4.7 million visitors a month. A year. That would be nice if it was a month, a year, which is nice. So 4.7 million visitors a year. Page views are average about 3.8 page views per visit, which is nice because then you get very large amounts of page views. And it's doing 130,000 in ARR, so annual revenue of 130,000, which is a nice, comfortable amount of money. I mean, that's a salary for a lot of people, which is good. Now, it's taken 6 years to grow that, which is proof that 5-year plan works if you stick with it, because it certainly wasn't getting 100,000 plus out of the door and wasn't getting 4.7 million visitors out the door. That's growth over those 6 years. Site number 2 launched a couple of years ago. It's been a slow burn up to releasing the premium side. I did the premium side at the end of last year. traffic is pretty good for that already. It's doing about 113,000 visitors last year, which was good. It's doing projected, we're going to hit about 30,000 K this year, which is nice. And then when I look at the end goal for that 5-year plan, we're going to exceed site number one. But my goal is every site that I launch on this 5-year plan has got to exceed in revenue and visitor base to a certain X number of exponential for site, not the previous site before it. So we're always stepping up. And site number 2 is certainly projecting way more than site number 1, which is nice.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. So you probably know the importance of building internal links so your site can perform well in Google. Today I want to share how Link Whisper can help you add outbound internal links to your articles. As you draft your article in WordPress, Link Whisper scans your site, identifying the best internal link opportunities. It then recommends the perfect anchor text and link to add. With just a click, your content is updated with new internal links. No more expensive tools or tedious manual site searches. Link Whisper does the heavy lifting right inside the WordPress editor. Say goodbye to the hassle of internal linking. With Link Whisper, you can focus on what you do best, creating great content. Use the coupon code PODCAST today and get $15 off. Elevate your website's internal linking with Link Whisper now. Building smart internal links just got easier. Go to linkwhisper.com today and be sure to use coupon code PODCAST to get $15 off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it just from back of the napkin math, like it looks like while site number 2 doesn't have nearly the traffic or the revenue, its revenue per visitor is significantly higher. So that's interesting to see how that's going to play out over the years. So
Exactly,
more power to what you've been saying so far. Okay, 4.7 million visitors a year is a lot of visitors. That's, 400,000 a month. Obviously, site number 2 is well on its way. Let's talk about how you get traffic. Let's talk about how you engage with people. Let's talk about how you move them through the funnel and get, free people to end up paying. Maybe let's start with traffic generation. How are you getting almost 5 million people to your website every single year?
Yeah. So a lot of people, when they look at that kind of numbers, they immediately think SEO. This has got to be SEO strong. I actually took the complete opposite approach to that. I've done a lot of relying on search engines in the past, and that was one of those other things where you could tell that the landscape was shifting, and social media was coming into play, and it became very apparent to me that social media was going to be a big factor in being able to drive certainly traffic and brand retention into what you're doing. So when I started setting out on these sites, I decided to put SEO to the side. I'm not going to look at SEO at all, and I really took the complete approach of not even worrying it. To give you a kind of an idea of how much I put it aside, I did a SEO audit a couple of years ago on site number 1 when it was 4 years old, just to see where some low-hanging fruit was, and I actually found out I didn't even have an H1 tag on the main page of the site, which is, if you know SEO, H1 tag is like 101. You start with the H1 tag. I didn't even have that on the main page, and yet the site at that time was still doing millions of viewers a year. So you don't need SEO to actually be successful. What I did is I took an approach of social first. So I knew that I wanted to build audience retention, which meant I needed to build audience trust, which needed to build a brand and people to recognize it. So I took a long focus on getting into the communities on social media where the audience was, and that's critical for your niche as well. You've got to make sure that there is an audience out there. You can't just pick a niche that has a minute audience and there's only maybe a couple of hundred people in a strange forum on the corner of the internet. You've really got to pick something that has a large audience so that you can actually go ahead and be with that audience and be with that community and engage with them. So I went very heavy on social media, and it was a case of find the social media where it works for you, because not all social media is going to work for you. You've got to find where it is. So for site number 1, big into YouTube, big into Facebook, not at all into Twitter at all, and then TikTok didn't exist at all for that kind of stuff. So it was finding the niches and going heavy in those niches on social media. And it's really better if you're not just building your brand in terms of putting up a page or putting up a YouTube channel. You're actually going in and engaging in the communities in those social medias as well. So Facebook is very heavy on Google Groups. I know Nina Clapton, she loves the Google Groups, and she's absolutely right. I got very heavy into Google Groups very early on, not running my own group, but getting into other people's groups and really promoting my brand. And it's not a case of going in and selling in those groups. It's about going in and participating, being a community member in those groups so that they'll actually start to trust you. You give a lot of stuff away for free in there. And then that drives your brand recognition. They'll then start learning who you are. They'll come to your website directly. And then when they start to come to your website directly, my number one rule for anything I put up is I've got to get their email address. Newsletters are absolutely the key here to getting audience retention. You can't just hope that they're going to remember your brand and then come back the next day and the next day. You've got to have some way in which you can then reach out to them. So get them into your site, and any way you can, get an email address. And that's where the subscription websites with the freemium models works really well. A lot of people like to use lead magnets to get people in on social media. I like to get people into the website and then use the free little sign up to get free access to content as kind of a lead magnet on steroids. It really does convert really well. I get so much more email signups from people actually going ahead and getting a free user account on the site to get the free access to content than any lead magnet or any paid for lead form or anything like that. Once you've got the email, really that's your conversion. That's right there. You can reach out to them to get them to come back for the free content. You can email them multiple times a week. Maybe you have fresh content, they'll come back to the content, they'll start to trust your brand more, they'll start to recognize you more. And then also when it comes to offering them the premium side, that is by far the number one converting way in which you can get people to convert. No other marketing mechanism has converted better for me than your newsletter with email. So getting that email is really critical for me.
So, okay, let's dive into some of this here. You talked about Facebook, you talked about groups, you talked about YouTube. Any details on what you're using YouTube for, or how you're using YouTube in terms of your social platform?
Yeah, so with the YouTube, it's really just about giving away more free content. I give away a lot of free content on the website. You can extend that into the social media channels. So YouTube is, you put up videos, it gives people free content. It tells them a lot of the stuff that's already on the website, you can just convert into a YouTube video, give the same information. And then at the very end, it's just a very small call to action to say, I am so-and-so, come back and visit me on my website. And you can even give, lead magnets in the videos as well if you want to. But I did find that a lot of people will come back on those YouTube videos. Same thing with social media and Facebook and Twitter and everything like that. You give away the free content on there as well, and then they'll come back to the website. Don't feel like you've got to gatekeep all the content on your website. Put it on the website, but then push it out to the social media channels as well to get them to come back to your website.
Once they get to the website, social media, social first, you talked about how you get people to go to the website, and then you talk about how, hey, lead magnets, that's great. Getting people email address is the goal, but lead magnets, a free account, free content, free content basically is what you kept kind of saying. Can you go into more depth on that? Because, as listeners listen, it's going to be very hard not to get in the mindset of, well, wait a second, when you go to my website, you can get all the free content. How would I gatekeep all that? How would I get you into a membership when I have content? But talk about the type of subscription and freemium model where their concept is being transitioned into, hey, get free content via a subscription.
Yeah, this is where a lot of people get worried about, what do I give away for free versus what do I gatekeep behind an email versus what do I gatekeep behind a paid subscription. And
bingo.
Once they come to your website, you should not be afraid to say, here's the content you wanted to see. If you want to see a little bit more of this, give me your email address. You see a lot of newspaper sites do this where they'll give you the first couple of paragraphs and then they'll hide that. I don't like that because that irritates me so much when I try to look at something. What I like to do is I like to give them what they came for, so they're not, they're not disappointed because they got what they came for the website. But then you say very clearly, you ask up front to say, hey, look, I've got more for you and this part's even better. Just give me your email address and you can have this. A lot of conversions from that kind of mechanisms. But the key thing is I see too many people giving free content and then only having that little sign up button in the top right of the site, or free content and completely missing it. In every single piece of content you give, you've got to have that sign up. You've got to always be asking for that email address. Don't feel like you're being intrusive or being obnoxious, always asking for it, because some people, yes, they may get turned off for it, the majority of people won't, and the majority of people will give you that email. And if you've done your job of building up your brand, building up your reputation on the top of the funnel, on the social media sides of things, then when they come to you, they already trust you. They already say, I like this person, I like this site. I'm going to give them my email address because my email address is easy. It's, I'm not asking anything more than my email, and then I'm going to get access to all this more stuff. Just keep asking for the email address.
Let's talk about your email newsletter, your email process. Take us through from like a high level. Once somebody gets on your email list, what an experience or what the interactions are going to look like.
So they sign up for the email, and a lot of people, this is one thing where I do it very differently from a lot of people in the industry. A lot of people say, sign up for an email address, have an onboarding funnel, introduce them to your site, and get them to go through all the different features and stuff. At this point, people know who I am. More than likely, they know who I am. They've already come to me multiple times on the website. They've given me the email address because they trust me. So I don't need to really reintroduce myself. They've given me the email address to get access to an extra piece of content. So they then just go into my regular email newsletter. And my regular email newsletter, I try to do a case of a 1 in 5. So I'll give away 5 pieces of free content in an email, and that can go out anything up to every single day of the week to maybe once every 2 or 3 days. There's a high frequency of emailing people. And then on the 5th one or the 6th one, then it'll be a soft sell into, by the way, I've got this extra thing here. If you want access to it, you can go ahead for premium members and get that. And that converts really well. As long as you're not just battering them all the time, every single email is pay, sign up. They've got to want to open the email. They've got to want to get something out of the email. So if you give away the free content in the email, a lot of the time it's give away some of it in the email and then drive them back to the website. Once again, driving them back to the website, getting them to visit the website. That way they'll recognize the brand again. They'll see the good content they want to. They'll trust you more. It's all about trust and brand and bringing that back up so that when you do ask for, by the way, here's a little bit of extra. If you want to give me some money and sign up for it, they'll be happy to, because that's what they want to do.
This might be too detailed. I'm guilty of asking detailed questions sometimes. Do you find that converting in the email or pushing people onto the website and then having that conversion process, like where do you find that works best? A lot of people will recommend, hey, following your approach, every 5th email, like, hey, give them an offer and do that in the email so they convert, they click a button and that happens in that experience. A lot of other people will say, hey, give people an offer, but have it as part of something that they do on the website. So go read this and then give them the offer. Go learn about this and then give them the offer. Maybe nuanced, but I've heard this question come up many times when we've done interviews prior about email newsletters and conversions. Any thoughts on that? Or maybe you have a third or totally different approach to how you get people to convert through that email?
Yeah, so this is one of the key things I've learned when moving from site number 1 into site number 2 and launching the premium site for site number 2. In the past, I've been very much a case of try not to put it in their face, try to make it more subtle. I said, give them the lead in with the content, get them on the content, and then make it more of a passive, by the way, here's extra stuff you can get. And that converts well. Yeah, by the way, exactly. Yeah, and it converts well. You still get a lot of people signing up for that. As I went to site number 2, I started to get a little bit more aggressive with it because of the nature of site number 2, the features that I was building, the way in which the benefit to the premium side of it was so much stronger. I felt like I could be a little bit more aggressive in it. So what I would do is I would get them into the free side, get them into the content, but I'd be a lot more aggressive into where I was asking for the actual upgrade. So there's a very clearer gatekeeping in terms of, okay, you've come for this feature, you might actually want this extra piece, but you're going to have to pay for it. And that is multiple times in all of the content now. So it's a lot more of it. And I've actually found that has done better with my conversion rate. So it's one of those things where we're always afraid to ask. And I have also been afraid, site number 1 did great. Now I'm getting more aggressive. I'm not seeing any negative pushback. I'm actually seeing better growth. And I'm seeing more premium users. So at some point, I'll hit that tipping point where I'm asking too much and I'll get some negative feedback. And that's another thing for listening to your community. If you do something that your users don't like, they won't tell you. They'll go and complain in the community. So you got to go ahead and make sure you're listening still, because you'll know when that negative feedback comes in. You don't want to start damaging your brand. But yeah, I've been more aggressive and it's converting better. So just don't be afraid to ask for that premium upgrade. If you know that your product offering is strong enough and it's something that will benefit the user, then definitely go ahead and feel justified in asking for the money for it.
Final question on this front. How, it sounds like you're emailing a lot. It sounds like you're giving a lot, right? And you got 4 out of 5 emails are a give. How are you creating this much content just from a high level? Where are you getting the topics from? And how are you able to, create that much content to send that many emails?
Yeah, it really comes back to niche selection again. If you've picked a niche, and if you've done it the right way, going back to what I said about refreshable content, then you don't have a fixed finite number of subjects that you can work with. It's not as if what you're trying to give them is just a pass pool that you've always got to pull from. If your content is refreshable, every single week or every single month, there's going to be new information coming in that you can then share with your user base. And so a lot of the time, the content that I'm sending out isn't just past historical, by the way, this happened in the past, or you can learn this based on past stuff. It's, this is new coming out this week, or for next month, go ahead and focus on these things because this is fresh content coming in. That's people love the fresh stuff because they can go to you for a trusted source for that information.
Let's talk about pricing. Pricing is, I'm going to guess, incredibly important when the majority of people are in a freemium model, not paying you. And so that conversion and how much they pay you, whether on a monthly or annual revenue basis, like you talked about, how much they pay you is kind of like, you got a small subset of people that are paying you. So I imagine pricing is incredibly important. I imagine it has huge impacts on your conversion rate. Obviously has huge impacts on how much money you end up taking home from this entire big project. What have you found has worked well? What do you find working well right now in terms of how you price a freemium versus a premium product?
Yeah, so I actually like to work on the lower end of the pricing tier. I know a lot of people say, okay, once you start getting into membership sites and pricing, don't be afraid to ask for a lot of money. Don't be afraid to get those high ticket pieces in. It'll reduce your support costs. You'll have less people to worry about and all that kind of stuff. And there is an element of truth, but it really comes down to niche selection with that. Certainly if I was doing high-end tech courses and teaching people about new features of technology that was coming out, I could probably go for high ticket. But the niches I've selected are not high ticket niches. That comes down to knowing your audience. You've got to really know the persona. What is the demographic? Where are they on a financial standpoint? What is their disposable income to be able to pay for these things? And also, what are your competitors in the landscape doing? If my competitors are charging, $30 a year, I can't charge $300 a year because it's just not going to work. So making sure that you're very well versed in who you're doing for and who your competition is will help you decide what to price it for. I've picked niches that are very much low tier. So my starting price point for a lot of these are single digits. When I learned site number one, my price point was $2.50 for a month for the membership, which is incredibly low, especially when you start thinking about all the fees that go in. Half of that would get chewed up in just credit card fees and Stripe fees and what have you. So I've gradually grown that over the years, as to increase. As I've added more feature and functionality into the site, I've grown that to be more. But even then, I've stayed on the lower tier. My lowest, I've now gone from a single pricing tier to 3 pricing tiers. So my lowest is about $4 and something. My highest is just under $20. So I've got those 3 tiers, and depending on what you give them, there's a different tier of access to things. Now, I've only been able to do that because I've grown 6 years worth of functionality, and it's enabled me to know that not everyone wants to eat everything. There are some people that just want one piece of it. There are some people that want the premium white glove treatment. So once you've grown a large enough user base, you'll be able to start to see those differences in users. But certainly out of the door, I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend starting with just a single pricing tier and going with that. The other thing that's critical is make sure you have an annual pricing as well. I see people start with just a monthly pricing, and they say, I'm worried about committing to a year's worth of this stuff because if someone pays me an annual fee, I've got to stick for a year's worth of updates for this. Don't worry about that. If it works, it'll work itself out. But what you'll find is, certainly early on, you don't know what your churn rate is going to be. But when you do know when your churn rate is going to be, For example, site number one has a churn rate of about 6 months, like I mentioned. I can price an annual pricing just above 6 months, so 8 months worth of content. And I know that I'm essentially getting 2 months worth of extra revenue if they sign up for the annual fee, which is nice, because we'll find a surprising number of people will pay an annual fee up front first time they're signing up, which shocked me initially. So always make sure you're offering that annual one, because people will churn out. Now, if you have a churn rate of multiple years, with like site number two is projected to have, you still offer the annual fee, but don't offer it as such a steep discount. You can do 2 months for free or 3 months for free. Don't give away the house with it.
That's a brilliant tip right there, that if you know your LTV and you can really get creative in your pricing. I mean, it's common to see 2 months free on an annual. I know that's something I see all the time, right? Get like 2 months free if you buy the annual plan, but you're able to give a more aggressive one, which is going to appeal to a lot more people, simply because you know that, hey, that's increasing my LTV by on average 2 months across the board. And with as many users as you have, that can make a really big impact.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's all money in the bank at the end of things. And a lot of the time you'll see those people that even sign up for the annual, they'll recur year after year after year. You don't just have to assume they're going to churn after that. That's just extra money. It's just always making sure you're very mindful of what that average revenue is, and pricing just a little above that.
Let's start to bring this to a close, and let me ask you from a high level, I guess if we were to, I don't want to say summarize what we talked about today, but maybe summarize some of the high level takeaways about what you've seen that has worked really well when it comes to membership, when it comes to subscription, and maybe a few things that you have seen don't work well. Have you tried? And again, from a high level, we don't have to get into the details on them, but I think just to start to bring this thing to a wrap, we've gotten into so much detail, and I'm trying to kind of bring us back to subscription sites, using websites, using all the knowledge that we have about how to create traffic and build content. But from a subscription standpoint, like, what are the big takeaways in terms of what's been working for you from a high level, and maybe a few things that you've tested and haven't worked?
Yeah. So the two big takeaways, I mentioned these already, are definitely community. You cannot assume that you have an idea today and go ahead and build it and they will come. This is not Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner's not going to come along and solve your problems for you. You've got to really make sure you're in the community before you do your first round of development. You're making sure that the community has a problem that you're solving, or has a need for what you're actually going to build. Site number one is a prime example of this. Site number one was actually a rebuild of one of the things I'd done very early on. And the very first iteration 20 years ago of this was very focused on one side that I thought, based on my own interest, people would be interested in. And it flopped completely. And then when I started to look at the niche again, the second time around, when I was starting to do my first planning, I dove into the communities out there. I watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos, I got into some Google groups, and I started to understand the persona of the person that I was trying to solve a problem for was completely different from what I was thinking. I was thinking it was this one side of the thing, completely different, completely pivoted what the goal of site number one was, and it really took off. It really made a huge difference. So make sure you're doing your research, you're in the community, you're understanding what people need. That is critical for you.
Paul, where can people follow along with what you're doing? I know you and I connected over the years on Twitter, and I know you're still active there. I'd share your handle, but I would have to spell it, because I'm probably not going to say it right. But where can people follow along with you?
It's funny. Yeah, definitely follow me on Twitter. I made a pledge 2 years ago to finally figure out how to use Twitter, and I think I've nailed it, because we connected. So I'm happy to say that was a goal accomplished. But definitely follow me there. That's where I spend most of my time these days. It is aoaku.com, which is, yes, horrible branding. I know it was a 5-letter domain name. I thought, I'm going to be Google. I'm going to brand a domain name that no one can pronounce. So it's aoaku.com. That is my brand name on there. So definitely go ahead and find me. You can go to aoaku.com. That's my website. You can follow me there as well. But definitely Twitter's where I spend most of my time. And my wife will be happy when she sees this, because she's told me for years now that was a horrible name and no one could pronounce it.
Well, I guess I sort of implied that, didn't I? I didn't mean to, but I guess I kind of did that. So fair play. She'll get one on you on that one. So and I'll include it in the show notes too. If you're listening and you want to hit the show notes, you can pop over. A good follow. That's how we connected. I've enjoyed your content over the years. Paul, thanks for coming on. This was amazing. I mean, certainly everyone listening is always interested in deep diving a business idea that works. And you've been doing this for, well, 25 years, but along the subscription-based membership model, 6-7 years now. And the amount of traffic you're driving, the amount of annual revenue you're driving is a testament to kind of how deep you've dove into it. So thanks for coming and sharing the process. I learned a lot. Till we talk next time.
Thanks, Ed. I really appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I just wanted to remind you that if you are ready to start building smarter, faster, and easier internal links, you should check out Link Whisper. You can get $15 off Link Whisper when you use the coupon code podcast at checkout. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use the code podcast in order to save $15. Thanks again for listening.